Welcome everyone to Seek Foundation again. Thank you. I'm your host Alan, and today I have the privilege of really inviting someone that I have a great respect for. We actually worked together before, and we're in the same ministry as well. It's Josh here, and I'm so glad he's actually in another country right now. So we'll talk a lot about that afterwards. But really, this September is about the theme of transition, and he is very much one of the perfect person to talk about this. So, without further ado, Josh, thank you for joining us today. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here. Very honored that to be part of this. Is this a podcast? Does it count as
This
a
is
podcast?
this is like the interview, the sharing. Yes, part of it. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Well. Yeah. Um. I mean, what's there to say? I was like Alan said. I think for the past 2 years we were colleagues, but I think we met. I don't even remember when we met. I think sometime maybe through MF. I think maybe.
Yeah, not the mission trip, but that definitely in MF.
Yeah. So I guess some years before that. Um, so for the past 2 years, I was working in the care group and equipping ministry at Island ECC, and then I've actually just moved to Singapore for seminary. I've been in Singapore for about 3 months now, so that's what I'm doing now.
Great. Well, how about this, Josh? I mean, like, I'm sure a lot of people have many questions, and we will look into the transition part. But why don't you just tell a bit about yourself, your background, and why you're in Singapore, and yeah, kind of like your whole background.
All right, okay, life story in 2 minutes, I guess. Um, Yeah, so I mainly grew up in Hong Kong. Went to school there, and then I went to university in the UK. Um, Grew up in a Christian family. My parents are very involved in the local church, and my brothers and I, grew up going to church, doing all the Sunday school stuff, typical kid in a Christian family, that sort of thing. So I would always consider myself a Christian, and I think it's given me a good grounding as well. Um, but it wasn't until university that I really decided to, hey, I should take it more seriously. I should, if I'm going to call myself a Christian, then I really need to think about what it means and to really pursue that in a more um, consistent way. So I think I grew quite a lot in my faith during my time there, and I think I was helped by a lot of Christians from my church at university. And then, yeah, and then I graduated, came back to Hong Kong for work, and yeah, and I've serving at Island ECC as a volunteer care group leader, and then yeah, and then I guess I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole Bible study, the preparing for it, and just being a part of a Christian community. And I thought, oh, maybe it'd be nice to do this full time someday, but I didn't really see a path into it. So I didn't feel like I should kind of force my way into ministry. But I guess uh, I guess I'll talk about this a little bit more. But the short version is that so over time, continued volunteering, talking to my pastor and praying about it, and eventually the opportunity at INECC came up, and that's when I made the jump into working in ministry.
Mm. I would like to ask a bit more about like your family. Like, are you like second generation or third or fourth generation? And are your parents in ministry before as well?
I would say third generation Christian, I suppose, but I think I'm not sure how much of the faith my grandparents understood, but I do believe that they would call themselves Christians and they would attend church kind of on and off. But my parents were very much involved in church. They they were not employed by the church in any official capacity, but they did. They are very much involved in the sense that my dad would preach, so I grew up listening to him preach, and my parents would both lead small groups and things like that. So it was very common for my brothers and I growing up to have my parents' small group come over to our home kind of every now and then. So yeah.
That's interesting. How was that like? Were your parents like deacons or elders as well, or since he was preaching as well? Did he even study seminary?
Yeah, my dad did a bit of study, and I think because we grew up in a Methodist church, so they allow lay preachers. So they would have a bit of give them some training, and they would be, yeah, and they would be kind of rostered into the preaching schedule. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about like what was it like for your parents, seeing your father to preach, or you have people around your house leading small groups and stuff? How was that like growing up?
It was it was just normal to me. I didn't know anything else. To be honest, I didn't really listen that much when I was young at church. Uh, I didn't really appreciate what was done, I suppose. And I think, to be honest, I appreciate it a lot more now. The more traditional elements of a church, because it was a more traditional Methodist church. So, yeah, I think all the liturgy, all the different things that you had to say, and kind of the call and response type of things that they would do. I didn't really understand that until when I was much older. So yeah, small groups. It was just all the aunties and uncles coming over, and they would and yeah they would chat, and then they would read the Bible, and then we would yeah. So when they were doing that, my brothers and I would just be playing in our rooms. Yeah.
So there were fond memories, but you really only really grasp it a lot later. What was that in the university, or when you started studying yourself, or when did you start really appreciating like what you mentioned, like the depth of like these like Bible studies or fellowships?
Yeah, probably kind of yeah after uni, I suppose, or when I started to kind of think about things more deeply and spend more time thinking about these things.
Mm. And how was it like for you as you led your groups? Was it similar to how your parents were leading it, or you took on a new way that you would like to lead your groups in these small groups that you're leading?
I actually don't know how my parents led it because we were never there. We found that part boring, so we just played on our own. My brothers and I, we never sat in on the Bible studies. But when I first started leading a care group, it's funny because um, I think I was the youngest in the group at that time, and I think a few of them were maybe in the 30s, 40s. Some of them had kids. So looking back, I think they showed me a lot of grace in that they allowed me to lead essentially. Um, but yeah, when I first became a leader, I was kind of I suppose I was kind of naive, and it's like, oh, I can read the Bible, I can lead a study. And it's like, yeah, sure, I'll lead a care group. So it was very much me talking and maybe even you could say teaching um, when I first started out, which I then later realized it wasn't really supposed to be like that. It was so then, but yeah, it was a good learning experience, and I think I benefited a lot from it personally as well when I was doing the prep and things like that.
Yeah, I so some of you I know many of you will not know Josh, but he was known to be the guy that reads all the old stuff, this I think it's Spurgeon, or I'm not sure, Tozer, or who, or Edwards, those stuff. So I was very surprised. Whereas there's this handsome fellow in our church, but he loves to read these things. So hey, how about more about you? Are you more like, now, I know you like your football. I think we support the same team, but is it, how do you balance that of loving God's word and just kind of like, being all you can be?
Um, well, first of all, I don't think being a Christian, loving God, doesn't mean you can't have other interests. I think it's more like we just have to make sure those other interests don't take priority over God, and we don't idolize them. So, which is difficult, and it is a struggle for myself. I think when it comes to exercise, it's definitely something that I need to constantly remind myself about. That, oh, hey, it's not it, it's good, but it's not the best thing. And I don't need to kind of obsess over it or make it a compulsory thing, even though I do try to do it on most days. But yeah, I need to yeah, constantly remind myself to, hey, be careful about idolizing it.
Mm. Yeah, and I think like this theme on transition, like as you talk about like the transitioning from, having good examples as your parents, but not really getting the chance to really see how you imitate the way they lead a group, or even like when we transition from things that are quite comfortable for us to things that we actually really do need to prioritize, which is God, is a way that we transition the way we live this lifestyle. So how was it like? Are you the type that like needed examples in order to be more and more faithful, or you're just a self learner? How did you get so serious in your faith?
Um, I think both. I think I suppose the biggest, I guess the most fundamental transition for I guess all of us as Christians is the transition from, I guess, before Christ and then after Christ, right? Non-believing to becoming a Christian. So I think it's always a combination of uh, people, other people teaching, other people sharing, and looking at their lives. And for me, it was reading C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity that had a massive impact on my faith, and I think it really helped to firm up my foundation. But at university, I mentioned that was when I got a lot more serious about my faith, and that I think was due to just seeing how people who have a really kind of true love for God, and it really showed in how they lived their lives, how they spoke to people, how they behaved, how they were so generous with their time, with their money, even though I know that they didn't have a lot, and yet people were so willing to give and to help. And I think the thing that struck me most was that a lot of these people were my peers. They were my age because it was a university church. So these were just fellow students.
Mm.
And just to see how they could have a really true and close relationship with God was something that struck me. And I realized that maybe I didn't really have that myself at that point. So that really made me kind of think about, oh, maybe I need to, to really kind of take this more seriously.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think like even for myself, I feel like some of the mentors that I've had all these years, like they're not really around in my life, but their example, their Christ living really rubs it off. And I'm like, wow, the faith is a little bit more than that, or if it's just not just on the Bible or some books, right? But before I want to investigate a bit more on the university, Mere Christianity, one of my favorite books. If that was one of the books on top of Bible, that would be the one that I take. Can you just like share a little bit more about Mere Christianity? Why was it such a big influence on you, and maybe your favorite chapter, or anything you really use it as a way of living your life right now?
Uh, I'm not sure I would say I have a favorite chapter or that I would have specific paragraphs or specific lines that I base my life upon. But I think what I appreciate most about Lewis, not just in Mere Christianity, but just the way that he writes in general, is that he is able to explain or describe biblical truths in a way is that makes it very easy to understand. The examples and the metaphors and the analogies that he uses are very apt. And somehow he manages to think of these ways to express spiritual truths that just makes things simple and like easy to understand. And I think that was what I kind of appreciated most about it.
Yeah, it's a really great apologetic book. I mean, like always love it. I've been using it all along, and for me, it's chapter 8 when it talks about the great sin of pride, and You know how it's really focused on comparing with one another, like how that will be actually really down for us as Christians. So you mentioned like these are peers that you had in school, and did you guys do discipleship? What was so significant in the way they live or behave, and they're generous with their time and money that really struck you? Was it something that you've never experienced before in Hong Kong when you were with your parents, even when you're in the Methodist church?
I, I think it wasn't so much specific events or incidents. It's just in general how they behave towards each other and to other people, how they
Mm,
spoke, how they use their time and resources. Uh, so that was very different because I suppose when I was growing up, Sunday school, everyone's like a teenager,
mm,
like everyone's like a kid. No one's really taking it that seriously.
mm,
So it and all the serious Christians in my life so far were adults
mm.
who I don't really interact with because they're just like adults, aunties, uncles. I was like a teenager. Why would I talk to them about these things?
Mm,
Um, so when it came to university, then I think because everyone's a bit more mature, they're older, and they're thinking about these things more, then then it's kind of refreshing or surprising to see people who are my age
mm,
be that kind of committed to Christ, whereas I've never had any other peers who were like that before.
yeah. Can you give like an example that really like, you still remember to this day?
Uh, I mean, it's not a standout example, but it's just people who were very caring
Mm,
in their words. They
mm,
would be it's just simple things like if someone had a tough day uh or had just was going through something difficult and they'll be like bro, I'm so sorry to hear that, how can I pray for you? Just
mm,
things like these. Like I've never heard anyone of who's my peer say anything like this. Like
mm,
I mean,
mm.
because growing up I was just typical kind of teenage boy, teenage guy. It's like, yeah, how would well, I wouldn't know how to say these things. I wouldn't know how to be
Yeah.
empathetic or to kind of express care and sympathy in this way.
Mm,
So to see my peers do that, then that was oh yeah, yeah, you could do that. Oh, I
mm,
could do that. Yeah,
mm.
yeah.
Yeah. I think it's like really having those good people around you. And I think like peers, like, like Corinthians mentioned, like, good companies, like bad companies would ruin good morals, right? Like,
Hmm.
it's really important to be in good companies as well. And so was your faith kind of decided because you're like a third generation Christian, or did you have to make that choice and then going through baptism? What was that like?
Uh, everyone has to make their choice, I suppose. Although I think it does help to be in a Christian family, and I think it is a huge blessing to have grown up in a Christian family with Christian parents who
Mm,
brought me and my brothers to church. I think I can't imagine how different it could be if this wasn't true. So I think it really is a huge blessing to have Christian parents. Um, but yeah, and it helped that my dad was also a teacher. Both my parents are teachers and academics. So he had all of those books at home. So the Lewis, the John Stotts, and all of that. So I grew up in a time where I didn't really have internet or TV when I was young. So I read a lot. And something I appreciated a lot about my parents, it was that they taught my brothers and I how to read well. So we all enjoyed reading. We read a lot of fiction and storybooks. So we could read well and we enjoyed reading, which meant that, yeah, when I read Lewis, when I read Stott, those were I think those were very instrumental in my own decision to say, hey, I believe and I want to be a Christian.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been to John Stott's church in London also. I love that book, Basic Christianity, as well. Really good book.
Yeah.
Really, really, short, concise, and really brings out the character of God and who He is. And so, so then, as you transition, I mean, like, why did you not choose to go to your parents' church, but then consider going to another church? Was that something that you wanted to explore, or was it the community?
Uh, Well, I think because after university in the UK and because all of my studies and readings, it's all in English.
Mm,
And the church that my parents went to was a local Cantonese speaking church. So
mm,
then I wanted to find an English speaking church. So
mm,
that's why I kind of looked around and eventually I found INECC.
mm. So when you made that choice, was it community that was important? And you mentioned language. What was important for you when you choose, a place to worship?
Um, well, theology, the where, how, what kind of the theology of the church, that specific church, the preaching, uh, community, whether it's possible to find a community within that church, and I guess opportunities to serve. I guess
Mm,
that I would say those are the things, big things to consider when you're choosing a church in general.
mm. And how's your current church now in Singapore?
I really enjoy it. It is it is very focused on Bible handling. All the focus is on the Bible, and the preaching is all kind of continuous expository preaching. So we preach through books for pretty much all of the time. So yeah, and it's everything is focused on the Bible. Small groups, different ministries, whatever ministry there is, there will be some element of Bible teaching, and I think yeah, I think that is very good.
Mm. And I guess like yeah, like one I mean like this is where like can we transition to like the reason for like looking at the word transition for you, like is this kind of like one of your um greatest impetus and or motivation to go into seminary because you love preaching, or is it just because you read a lot already and you have great teachers and your parents and you have great experience in university, like what got you to transition into seminary?
Um, let's say it's been a 9 year journey into seminary
Mm,
um, since I first started working. So it was just a slow process of you know praying, kind of looking for opportunities, and just yeah, just seeing how God leads and whatever opens up. So it wasn't really something that I very actively sought out. It was
mm.
just when it became time to take the step and the step was there, then I took it.
Mm. And I remember like when we were talking in Hong Kong, like you had like another place that you're studying at. Why did you choose like like Singapore, like like when you could have maybe stayed in Hong Kong?
For this particular seminary. And I think Hong Kong does not have many English speaking seminaries as well.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I think this is like one really like allow the listeners to know more, like what you mentioned, all these choices and process, like how do you make these huge transition, like moving away from a city and then choosing seminary? I mean, I'm sure it's more than just the English in itself, or like can you go a little bit, share a little bit deeper on the mindset on how you choose these transition, like big transitions in your life?
Okay. I suppose I would say I've had three or four major transitions in terms of, I suppose, career. Um, so, yeah, my background is engineering.
Mm,
So then when I first started working in Hong Kong, I worked as an engineer for 3 years. It was interesting, but it wasn't interesting enough to the point where I wanted to stay on. So I knew I didn't want to stay in engineering forever, but I was happy in my role. I wasn't actively looking to leave. But then, I, yeah, but my friends, some of my friends knew that I would eventually kind of want to move on. So
Mm.
then one of my friends, um, he forwarded me a job description and said, hey, there's an opening at the company that I work at. I know you don't want to stay in engineering. Maybe this would be something you want to look at. So I looked at the job description, and it was for a role in corporate real estate at a bank. So yeah, I don't know nothing about finance, banking, or real estate. So I was like, why are you sending me this? And half the job description I didn't understand. Uh, but then he was like, "I'll just try it. Um, just have a look, talk to the boss, and see." And then I was like, "Okay, yeah. I mean, it's a big bank, and so I thought, oh, at the very least, it would be good experience, like interview experience, whatever." Um, so when I found out about the role, and when I kind of heard more about it, I thought it was, yeah, it's actually quite interesting, and I do feel like it would require more more of my skill set and more thinking, because at that point in my engineering role, I felt like it was a bit kind of routine. It didn't really challenge me that much. Um, so that was a big change, to change industries after 3 years and to change into something that I was not technically qualified for. I had no background in it. And to leave engineering at that time um, meant that I probably would not be able to go back into it, because I probably did not accumulate enough experience for me to kind of go back into it afterwards.
Mm.
So then, and I mean, no one knows whether I would make it in the whole, doing the whole real estate stuff, right? Because I have zero expertise. So if I get started in that and crash and burn, then, then that's it, right? So yeah, so my parents did express some concern, but after thinking about it, praying about it, um, it was I did feel like it was the right step, and I did feel a sense of calm. Although I don't think that should be the basis from which we make decisions, but yeah, it was just a mixture of things. And I think my friend told me that the boss was looking for a Christian to fill that role as well, because she herself was a Christian.
Mm.
Um, and then, yeah, so then, I mean, I thought part of it was that I thought, oh, I was still young, might as well go for it, right? I mean, it's better to try things when I'm young than to um, than to wait until it's too late. And this is something that Pastor Tim told me that I still use when people ask me about these things. He says, "Imagine your life as a boat. When you're young, it's a speedboat. You can change directions quickly and go far in whatever directions, and you can change again very quickly. But as you get older, as you take on more responsibility, maybe you get married, have kids, the boat becomes bigger and bigger, maybe like a huge cruise ship, and it becomes much harder, and it takes much longer time to turn and change direction. So then it's better to try out things, change direction when you're young, when you can move relatively freely, than
Mm.
when you're kind of older and
Mm.
it's more difficult to do so."
Mm.
So then I did 4 years of real estate, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it much more than engineering, and I I didn't want to leave. I wasn't thinking about leaving. My boss was great. Colleagues were great. I had a great team, and but then yeah. So throughout all of these years, even during my engineering, I had thinking about ministry. I had been thinking about ministry, um, but like I said, I didn't feel like it was the right way to go into ministry, as in like just finding a role at church and forcing my way and applying and then trying to kind of get in. Um, I feel like ministry roles are different to normal roles. So yeah, so any other job, I feel like God gives us the freedom to choose and to do it. If you want to be a doctor, do it. If you want to be a fireman, do it. And we have freedom to do that. But for ministry roles, I think we have to be a bit more careful about that. So then 4 years in corporate real estate, I was told this role in the care group and equipping team was open, and I was asked whether I would be interested. So I've read a lot of books on like, oh, should one go into ministry? How do you know if you should go into ministry? And most of them are like, oh, pray about it, seek God's will, talk to people, It's similar stuff, vague stuff. Like it doesn't give you a definite answer. Okay, if this happens, then go. If this happens, then don't go. There are some hard and fast guidelines, but by and large, most of them are you still have to discern for yourself. And that is ultimately true. But I think one thing that I read that was most helpful to me in terms of whether someone should go into ministry is this. So I can't even remember the name of the book. I've written it down somewhere, but I can't remember it right now. But the three things that he says you should look out for is so it's three letters, so A, and O. So aspiration is whether you have that desire to go into ministry in the first place, whether you aspire to be in ministry, whether you desire that work, whether you desire to go into ministry. So it's an internal thing, whether you want it yourself. The second A is affirmation. So affirmation from others. So you have to see whether your peers, your pastor, your fellow Christian brothers and sisters affirm your gifts in a sense, or affirm your suitability, affirm your character to go into ministry, whether they think you are suitable for ministry. Sometimes we think we're suitable, but like we have a ton of blind spots we can't tell. So we need other people to tell us, hey, maybe there's a red flag there. Maybe you should hold off. So affirmation from other people. So aspiration is internal, whether you want it. Affirmation from other, external. And then finally you have opportunity, and that is opportunity from God. So it's no good just having the first two, aspiration and affirmation. If God doesn't open the door, if God doesn't provide the opportunity, then I would say the answer is still no. Don't do it just yet. So I guess throughout the years, I've had bits of the, I guess I've had a lingering aspiration. So that's another thing. Whether your aspiration is, it's kind of a spur of a moment thing and it's gone after a week, or whether it's still there after kind of a period of time.
Yeah.
And so I've had that, and I guess over the years I've had affirmation from people. And when I received the opportunity for the role at INDCC, I explicitly reached out to quite a few people that I trust to say that, hey, I have this potential opportunity to do this, to work for church, to be in ministry. Do you think I would be suitable? Please be honest. Are there any areas where you think might be a bit, I don't know, dodgy, or maybe there would be areas for concern that tell me? So yeah, it was very, very interesting to see people's responses. So by and large, they were very positive. But there were also one or two things that people have brought up that were like, well, okay, actually, yeah, you have a point. That is true. That's something that maybe I need to work on. But nothing that's like big enough that would preclude me from going into ministry. just to be clear. But yeah. So I think good, honest feedback from people you trust is very helpful. It's not just any time, not just when you're considering ministry. So yeah, and the role that was offered was in the care group and equipping ministry, which basically is the ministry that I've been serving in for for most of my time in Ireland. So it's something that I like, I'm familiar with,
Mm,
that I continue to serve in. So it was a good role for me. And
mm,
there would be opportunities for kind of ministry work as well. So kind of all of those things together, yeah, it just seemed like it was the right choice. So that's, yeah, I made the decision to make the move into ministry. So just for, I guess, for your reference, and the whole time from when I first considered full-time ministry to actually doing full-time ministry, that was 7 years.
wow.
7 years of, I guess, thinking and praying and just seeing how God leads. And then, yeah, so after going into working for church, I would work for church for 2 years. So that would be a very helpful time for me as well, just to get a taste of what ministry is like. And I'm very thankful to my pastors who have afforded me opportunities to try different things like teaching a class, preaching a few sermons, that kind of thing. And yeah, and so I do feel like that this is something that I want to continue doing. And as such, the natural next step would be further training, further study, in order for me to do that. If I were to do that uh, in the future. So then that's when kind of seminary came into the picture.
Mm. So, and that's really good sharing, brother. I think AAO, I can remember that in the affirmation, aspiration, affirmation, opportunity. I think that's really good. And it took 7 years, as you said. But, like if you can just expand a little bit, because now that you're in seminary, I think that is the next transition that you made, right? On top of moving to Singapore. Like, was it because this was already thought about 9 years ago, or was it more in the last 2 years by working in church that got you to be moved to kind of not only really enjoy the role that you were at Island, but then also to move into the calling that you believe God is stirring in your heart?
Um, I think it was always in the picture if I, especially if when I was thinking about full-time ministry work, because I do feel like I'm interested in kind of word ministry, as in preaching and teaching the word in particular. So then, if I were to do that, then further training is a must. Like
Mm,
you
mm,
have to be you have to be trained to do that. I think it's very. I know there are preachers in the past and 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 guys in the past who didn't receive formal theological training, but I think that those are either exceptionally gifted or they turn out to be maybe not so great preachers. So then I think for the vast majority, I think formal theological training is the recommended route. I think if you want to go into um, word ministry.
mm. And what was the biggest struggle to to trans to transition into like this type of equipping in seminary? Or were there even any struggles to make that choice?
Um, I mean, it wasn't a huge struggle. I mean, I was already in ministry. I was already um, involved in. I had already had some experience in word ministry and the things that I'm interested in. So then, and I realized my need for further training. So then it wasn't really much of a struggle at all. I mean, I wanted to go. I
Mm,
wanted that training. I wanted to be trained. I suppose the struggle and I suppose what I would have to give up is all kind of pretty much all material comforts in my case, because I'm fortunate to not have any dependents. My parents are fine; they're healthy. My brothers are; they're all independent. They can take care of themselves. Um, I don't have I don't have kids. I don't have any immediate family that I have to take care of. I can I can up and leave anytime I want. So in that sense, I'm actually quite unencumbered and I'm free to kind of just do whatever. So I suppose the only things that would perhaps hold me back is just I guess the comfort of Hong Kong, having a job, having income, having um, uh, a place to live, and yeah. So, but I mean, yeah, those are the things that I mean, I guess most of us, I would say, hold those things too tightly. I think,
Yeah.
myself included, definitely, and I think it's actually a good thing for me to learn to see these things as just, hey, these are things that God has given to me, and I can let go of it. It's fine, and He will provide.
Yeah, I'm so glad we touched on this point because I remember we discussed briefly on this and like like this is your first time that you have to like fundraise and all these things, right? Isn't it? Like like
Well,
or yeah.
I fundraised or fundraise. Is that a thing? I fundraised for for the one of the Vietnam mission trips for MF back in the day. I think for one of the years I did fundraise, but I mean it wasn't as I guess the need. I suppose I didn't feel the need as personally as this time.
Mm,
But yeah, it was definitely yeah, it was to fundraise for seminary and for just for my whole move to Singapore is definitely a new experience, and it's been a
mm,
very it's a very fruitful and encouraging experience as well. Um,
mm,
it's I think most of us find it difficult to ask people for money, especially if you have to ask friends and family for money, and it's kind of awkward. Um, but the thing is, there is biblical basis for fundraising for missions work uh,
mm,
and things like that. So it's not like it's unjustified, but it's still there's still something that there was oh I don't really it's kind of I don't really want to ask,
yeah.
but but yeah, but at the end of the day, I think it is good to have that gospel partnership. Uh,
Okay.
So not so everyone who so in a sense everyone who has supported me whether financially or in a way it, I could argue that those who are praying for me the prayerful support is more important than the financial support. Not that I don't need the financial support, but
Mm,
I think prayer in a sense you could say is more powerful. Um,
mm,
so so everyone who's been praying and supporting me in whatever way is in a sense in this seminary journey with me. It's like we are partnering in the gospel together.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
so I think if we could see it in see it in that way, then it makes it easier uh, to not only ask for money but also to give and to be generous in supporting these things as well.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm very encouraged by and very thankful to everyone who are supporting me. And yeah, it's been just beyond my imaginations of yeah that yeah that yeah that many people would be willing to give. Yeah. So
Yeah.
even my old boss from my corporate real estate um, job is supporting me.
Wow. Yeah, and I think it's really awesome. I mean, this is like kind of like part of the reason why we do these sharing in Seek Foundation is because some people just cannot believe that some people are willing. And I feel like you said, the awkwardness or like, you know, asking people the difficulty is like it's more like down to us. But I think when our faith is at a level where we, like you said, we have been affirmed, you know, there's that affirmation, this is really from God, then it's like we would not go impeded into kind of this is the anointing, this is the purpose that God has for us, and then it's like it helps us to sanctify even more, right? And then in the process actually allow people to, like you said, partner with you in this gospel aspect. And you mentioned about prayer as well, and I think it's just quickly on this, I'm in seminary and I meet some of the people, and some of these people work in different countries. They're like missionaries. They said that the most important thing for people to do for them is to pray for them, because they don't want to be kind of forgotten.
Mm.
It's quite interesting, and it's like yeah, because everyone just asks them, like, it's like if you can pray, if you pray for them, it's a really special thing. So no, that Josh, that was really beautiful. And you mentioned that you wanted to share a little bit about like everyone needs to transition in no matter what it is. And you know, what is that kind of like revelation that God gave you that you want to encourage the body and even new believers or seekers that are tuning into this sharing.
I'm not sure if it's any great revelation, but just something that I've been thinking about. And I realized, I don't know, I feel like, yeah, I don't know. This could be a bit funnier, so I apologize for
It's
any.
good. It's good. We love some humor.
It seems a bit boring, man, so far. But yeah, I think before I touch on that, I think uh, I want to acknowledge that I think change is hard. Um, and I suppose, in a sense, maybe you could argue that it's slightly easier for me. Like I mentioned, I don't have many dependents or kind of responsibilities that I have to take care of. And yeah, but I think it is hard. And especially, I think it's hard for, it's especially harder for people to, who have a lot. And I think
Mm,
there is a cost. Uh, for some people, that cost could literally be higher because, well, they have more money, there's more to give up. They have more things, then they have more to give up.
mm,
They have more responsibilities, and yeah, then they have more of those things that they have to consider. So I just want to kind of acknowledge that there are a lot of things that people have to think about if yeah if they if they were to make a jump into something new. It doesn't have to be ministry. Um, so yeah, so sometimes I do think yeah, you have to consider your own circumstances as well, and whether it's the. So I think I don't. Yeah, it's you have to balance personal responsibility and also faith that God will provide. So
mm,
I have no clue how to do that, but
mhm.
I know that these are two things that you have to think about and balance when you think about your decision making. Um, yeah, so this is something that uh, someone told me regarding seminary grades. So, because I do find myself caring about my grades a little bit more than when I was at university. So someone said, "Oh, if you're at seminary, if you're a husband, if you are a father, so you have a wife, you have kids to take care of, then if you are that person and you are aiming to get an A in your studies, then maybe you might be in danger of neglecting your family or your other responsibilities. However, if you are a single guy, no responsibilities, studying full time, no job, nothing, someone like me, and if you are aiming to just get a C and scrape by your exams, then maybe you're not putting enough time into it.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah. So then yeah, I don't really know how that ties into this, but anyway, transition. What were you saying before?
But that's good wisdom. It's like it was there something that you wanted to share with the listener that really kind of spoke to you on top of the things that you just shared just now.
Uh, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, just building off that of the whole kind of change is difficult, change is hard, change is scary kind of thing.
Mm,
Yeah, and those things are true, but I mean, like they say, change is the only constant in the world. So it's unavoidable. You can't stand still. So I think even if you choose to not change, even if you choose to stay in your current job and not look for something else, even though you might want to, it doesn't mean that things will remain the same going forward. I mean, your colleagues will move on, the job nature will change, the company uh, might shut down. So things around you will keep changing. It's impossible to not transition. Um, so then I think sometimes if we if we're too afraid of changing, then sometimes we are in danger of letting or like we're in danger of being kind of pulled along by the current
mm,
and just you have you have even less control over your life than you had
mm,
in trying to stand still because
mm.
you just end up being dragged along by by life and by whatever circumstances.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes if you are looking to change, or maybe if you feel like you want to do something else, then maybe it's better to think about, oh, are there actual kind of legit concerns that prevent you from changing, or whether it's just a simple kind of fear of change or fear of the unknown.
Mm,
So sometimes I would say maybe it's better to be proactive and look for ways to transition in a good way than
mm,
to be too scared to do anything and kind of be pulled along.
mm. Yeah, I still think back, yeah, I still think back in terms of like how you made this jump and having a good degree and work and then transitioning to a job that you're not qualified, but then you're able to excel and then going into ministry that there are always, I'm sure there's these fear moments in there as well. But then you kind of like went along and explored, and then even currently being in Singapore, being seminary too. I'm not sure if there was fear of not knowing or not being able to meet the finances, but or even actually finding a church now, you having a really good church there as well. There's a lot of like things that it was like there's no knowing, but knowing that there is changes, because I think of your belief in God that He's a provider, He's the He's the Almighty God that has very much everything in His grasp, and you're His adopted son that He will provide whatever that's in your desire your heart. I think like really to be at the very tail end of this sharing is, was there any other thing that kind of like, was there like a book in the Bible this season, or a book that you have been reading that you want to recommend, or is there a practice? Is there a spiritual formation practice? What it is that that's helping you to become Josh this season?
I think just keep reading God's word and be fed by it. I think we need it more than we realize. And so then um, I know it's sometimes it's hard and it get dull, but I think if you keep at it, then there is you'll find that it does have power to change to change hearts. Um, and yeah, and I think as Christians we do have this comfort knowing that, like you said, God will provide, and is what that is what should make us different from non-Christians when it comes to facing the unknown and the uncertain. Because I mean, hey, we don't know what will happen, but we know that God will provide. Um,
Mm,
so then I think that should give us confidence in transition, if that is really if that is really the thing that you have to do. Um,
mm,
yeah. So yeah, I think there are godly transition. There are, I think, your motivations for transitions can be good and they can be bad. So you have to think about that, whether you're making a move or making a transition based on the right reasons. So it's you can't just say, "Oh, I trust that God will provide," but you know that that's a bad decision. Like if you
Mm,
decide to do something that you know is bad, but you can't just say God will provide and do it. Like you can't deliberately do something wrong and hope that God will bail you out. That's yeah, I don't think that's the right way to approach it. But if kind of in general that is you feel like and then people and other people perhaps affirm that it's the right decision to do, then even though it's uncertain, um, yeah, we can have confidence that God will provide. And I mean, ultimately, we're all transiting from life to death. We're all technically headed towards the grave in a sense, but yeah, we have hope that we will rise again with Christ in the last day. Um, so then, I guess if you look at it in that kind of big picture scope, then how are you making that transition? Kind of, we will transition that way, but like during that time we are here on Earth, how are
mm,
we kind of living it and kind of growing in our relationship to God as well? So
mm.
um, yeah, I feel like that's kind of that maybe I've kind of gone off track a little bit.
No, it's great. It's great. And brother, I mean, like we're just gonna end here and I'll be putting your contact and if anyone is interested to hit up on Josh, please do so. He's in Singapore, not Hong Kong, and please support him and love him. He has been, I would say, like kind of what he mentioned in the beginning, like he couldn't imagine if there were people that didn't have a parents or grandparents that have that belief in God and also building up that foundation. And rightly so, when he was young with his brother, maybe there wasn't that traction yet, but slowly but surely, God kind of affirmed it through university, through being at an ECC, and through different transition at work. He can see God's hand in it, and it's so encouraging to see such a young man, single man, completely dedicated to God, and that it is possible. And we were considering going into the direction of talking about singleness, but I think if you want to learn more, please message Josh. But I'm so thankful for you, brother, and I'll just pray for us before we end. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, Lord, just really thank you that even saying the word Lord, it really means master, and since you are a master, why should we be afraid? Why should we be fearful and not have confidence? Because you are the creator, you are the maker, you are the one that gives us wisdom and opportunities and life and relationships, and you open doors that we can only imagine. So Lord, I thank you for Josh's life. I thank you that you have put him in a position to build up. I love that it took him 7 years of a constant consideration to get into ministry. It wasn't something that was abrupt. It wasn't something that was not consulted. It wasn't something that he did not seek you in order to find. And Lord, when that opportunity did came, he grasped it and used it, utilize it to the best, to now transition to equip even further to preach and teach those that you bring to his life. So I just want to bless his church as leaders. Thank you for the way they teach the truth in all ways and in all ministry, to continue to encourage him and build him up. I pray for his brothers and sisters that will be walking alongside with him, just like those that he has walked alongside in university, in the way they behave, the way they live, the way they generously give up themselves, so that our faith is really lived out as salt and light, rather than just be in the contextualize of God, of your truth. But knowing that we do need your truth, Lord, may you continue to just be with him. That maybe even this is his 100th time reading the gospel, or the 1000th time, there's something new there that you will reveal to him, to inspire him that you are true and that you are real and that you're very much putting him in a place to succeed for his kingdom. So Lord, may your kingdom abound. May all the things that he speaks and teach will bring people to know you better, to bring people to turn back to you, to bring people to really love you, God. So Lord, thank you for this platform that we can share, and may you bless both our time ahead today. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Ben.